Well, hello, Vaughn. A week ago, you warned us that we may be waiting some time to get a clear result in the election, and certainly here we are a week later with three recounts that we're waiting for and 65,000 votes to be tallied this weekend. Where are your eyes going to be through all of this?
Well, Elections BC is going to be posting updates on the counting process on the weekend. So they've told us they're going to start. They've got 65,000 votes that have never been counted. These are mail votes or votes that arrived late for one reason or another. And they're going to count those first in the 10 closest ridings, because those votes could switch the results in close ridings. So they're going to do that on Saturday. They think they will complete that on Saturday. And then on Sunday and Monday, they're going to do recounts. They've agreed to do recounts in two ridings. One is a Surrey riding where the margin is 95, and one is over here in the provincial capital, Malahat-Wandafuka, where the margin is 23. And there's a riding in the interior in Kelowna where there was a mistake in the tallying, so they're going to do a partial recount there. They think all of that, they'll be posting the results from that too. So Surrey is being counted Sunday, and the Malahat-Wandafuka riding is being counted on Monday. They think they'll have final numbers for us by then, but there's some buts in this. First of all, if the counting on Saturday finds some more ridings that would justify a recount because the margin's really close, there may be other recounts.
Right.
The other thing is, this is another but, in our election law, if at the end of the counting, Elections BC declares this is a final count, we're done and dusted in all 93 ridings. If at that point there's any riding where the margin is so small, then there has to be a judicial recount. So all the ballots go in front of a judge, and the judge has 7 to 15 days. The margin, there's a formula in law. It says basically 1/500th of the votes cast in the riding. If the gap is smaller than that, there has to be a judicial recount. 1/500th in most BC ridings, because the vote tallies vary, probably between 30 and 50 votes. We don't know. It'll depend on the riding. But so to go back, we'll be watching for sure on Saturday to see what happens with all the counting of all the ballots that haven't been counted yet. And then we'll be looking for the results of the two big recounts, which are both NDP held, but they could flip. And that's Sunday and Monday. And there may be some loose ends left over after that. But certainly until Monday afternoon at the earliest, we're not going to be saying who's obviously going to be government. As you know, there's been reporting to suggest that these late ballots tend to skew to the NDP. That is borne out by the record, but we're always messing with things in British Columbia, so who knows what will happen this time.
Meanwhile, what are the parties doing? Are they sitting on their hands waiting for all this to happen?
Well, they haven't been entirely idle, so let's start with the Premier. David Eby on election night said we have to do better. Some New Democrats were going, what do you mean we, Premier? You're in charge. They wouldn't say that publicly. But then on Sunday, David Eby said, well, we took the most votes and won the most seats. Yes, that's true, at least at the moment. And then he had a whole news conference on Tuesday, and there he finally started to take some personal responsibility for what happened. He said, well, I'm responsible and I've got the message and all that. But he kind of segued back into we territory too. This isn't like the way John Horgan was, where Horgan, when he killed the provincial museum, said, "This was my decision. I made the mistake here. The blame is mine alone." We haven't heard that from EB yet. And I think there's some New Democrats. Look, NDP lost 16 incumbents, 5 of them cabinet ministers. This is a big reversal. David Eby inherited a huge majority from John Horgan, and he almost lost it. So this is big. Now, the other thing we should note that Eby said on Tuesday is he clearly expects to emerge from this process as premier. He says, we intend to hit the ground running. He said, we will need the support of other members of the House, probably, in order to pass legislation. He didn't commit to what his plan is for that, but he says the government's already preparing measures that it will present to the public as soon as this process is over. So fairly active thing. I would say not especially contrite about the message from the voters. And again, these very generous outreaches to the Greens, to Sonia Furstenau. The Premier has talked to her. He's made it clear that we share many values together. Okay. David Eby spent the last week of the election campaign denouncing the Greens, saying, don't dare vote for them. They're in league with John Rustad. And but that is politics, right? This is what you do, right? So sure. That's the NDP. The Conservatives, obviously euphoric. They came from nowhere, right? That's a big, really in a little over a year. John Rustad posted one video or a picture on social media, and he said when he got kicked out of the Liberals 2 years ago, his first thought was, well, ready to retire in 20 years in politics. With the encouragement of his wife, he instead went out for a beer in a pub in Vancouver with an old friend who is now his campaign manager, and another guy who is now his communications director. And they decided to try to overthrow the government. And they almost pulled it off, right? So they recreated the picture and posted it on social media. And maybe they might want to put a plaque up in that restaurant, right? Particularly if the recounts go Rustad's way and he ends up as premier, which could happen, right? But they're pretty upbeat. I think they've got some thinking to do in the Conservatives. One of the big surprises to me in the election, well, there were two. One was the Conservatives did really well and surprised the NDP in Richmond and Surrey. And the New Democrats were really taken aback by that. They thought they didn't expect the Conservatives to do that well there. The New Democrats thought the accusation that the Conservatives were full of racists and bigots would help the NDP in those ridings, because those are ethnically diverse ridings. Clearly, the voters in those ridings were looking at other issues. And we think that public safety, crime, drugs, disorder in Surrey, how many school portables are there in Surrey? Something like 400, I think. 8,000 kids in portables, long waiting lists at the hospitals. So that was one surprise, and it surprised the NDP. There's another surprise. We think the public safety issue was a big issue in this campaign, and the Premier says he thinks it was a big issue in this campaign. And yet 3 communities where disorder and violence and repeat offenders and open drug use and homeless encampments, 3 communities where those were huge issues, the Conservatives didn't break through. So Vancouver, Victoria, and Nanaimo. The Conservatives thought they were going to take seats in Nanaimo. They didn't. And they thought they were going to take more seats in Vancouver, and they didn't. Here in Victoria, it's a pretty strong NDP town, but there's no sign the Conservatives went anywhere here. So, you know, I still think public safety was an issue in the campaign and the issues around it, and the Premier certainly does. But that was surprising that the Conservatives didn't do better in those three communities. Had they broken through there, they would be the government. That's something for the Conservatives to think about. Why do those communities, in spite of all the problems, not vote for the party that was the big platform? They were going to fix it or try to fix it.
And I guess the one person who got what they wanted out of all of this was Sonia Furstenau, at least thus far. She was saying as many times as she could that, you know, give us the balance of power, and we'll exercise it wisely. So where is she in all this? She's staying on as leader, even though she didn't win her seat. Yeah,
well, bittersweet, I would say. You're right. She said, give us the balance of power, and they got it. It's just that she isn't holding it. It's two other MLAs, and both newcomers to the political process. So when the Greens had the balance of power in 2017, Andrew Weaver had spent an entire term in the legislature, so they had some experience. First to know is, you're right, she's going to stay as leader, although, you know, I don't know how you really lead a political party, especially when the House is sitting, if you don't have a seat in the House. I mean, what do? Sit in the public galleries and do it by hand signals? It's not that easy. The Greens have said, well, we'll wait for the next party convention or annual general meeting, so maybe she'll just stay till then. I was pretty surprised at her reaction on the issue of outreach to the two parties. So both the two major parties. So both David Eby and John Rustad have said, well, obviously we want to talk to the Greens. We may need their support. We want to know what they want, and we want to meet with them. Well, we get a news conference with First to Know this week, and she says, I've talked to David Eby. And then she says, I didn't take John Rustad's call. And she says, well, I didn't recognize it was his number. But then she made it clear that she's not interested in talking to John Rustad because a bunch of Conservatives that First to Know doesn't approve of because of their comments on social media, in some cases going back 10 years, some of those Conservatives got elected. And First to Know says she's not interested in talking to John Rustad until he gives a satisfactory comment on what it all means with those people getting elected. Well, the voters did that. You know, Rustad said he didn't approve of some of the comments that people made, but he's going to leave it up to the voters. Well, the voters elected them. They didn't elect Sonia First to Know, right? And Rustad's response on this has been pretty strong. He said, clear to me that Sonia First to Know doesn't really believe in democracy. Like, I've got some time for First to Know. She's done well on some issues. She's good at holding the government to account. She's a good speaker. People liked her. They thought she did well in the debates, all that. But really, seriously, to come out and say, I don't like these people that got elected with you, and you've, got to apologize to Sonia First to Know for that? It was, to me, I think she threw away some bargaining leverage, because if you think about the position the Greens are in, with 2 votes in the House, and either party needing them, probably, unless there's a big flip this weekend. Well, you can bargain, right? You can say to both parties, here's what we're interested in. What are you offering for our support? And the parties may turn you down and say, well, we're not going to do that, and we don't want that, and all that. In 2017, Weaver made his deal with the NDP, but very early on, First to Know, who was with Weaver, made it clear that she would not go with the BC Liberals. Like, it's a bargaining position, right? It doesn't mean you're going to take what they offer. It doesn't mean they're going to give you what you want, But in a real bargain, why would you effectively rule out dealing with one of the two parties? Because all that does is the New Democrats go, well, we don't have to offer much, not even talking to the other side. It's very strange.
Right. They can play hardball at that point themselves to some extent. Yeah.
And Harold, that's what they did in 2017. When John Horgan and his chief of staff, Bob Dewar, and the others figured out that there was no way that First and O would allow the Greens to prop up Christy Clark, the NDP's reaction was, we don't have to give them very much. They don't really have any choice. And so what they gave the Greens in 2017, what the NDP gave them, they gave them pretty much a bunch of stuff that was already in the NDP platform that the NDP was going to do anyway. They didn't really give them anything that the NDP hadn't already planned to do. Yes, we got rid of the big money in politics. The NDP was going to do that. We had a review of Site C, but it didn't kill Site C. And the one big difference they had with the Greens was development of liquefied natural gas. Well, the NDP went ahead with it because they got support of the BC Liberals, who wanted the project as well. So, again, I understand First and O's deep feelings on these issues, but to make the most leverage of your party's 2 votes in the House, you need to think about bargaining leverage in that. You're going to have more influence if you use that wisely, and I don't think she used it very wisely.
Interesting. Well, I'll be watching and reading you in the coming days, Vaughn, and hopefully when we meet again, we'll have a government, or at least we'll be a little closer.
I think so. We've got a bit of time yet. The election writs certifying the results of the election are due on November the 4th. What will likely happen is all of the final voting that's been declared, the writs will be returned and those people will be sworn in. We're not 100% sure yet when the legislature will sit. That would be up to the premier. There's a feeling in a minority situation that the premier and the government should demonstrate they have the confidence of the House fairly soon. I think the New Democrats, if they're government, they'd like to wait till the budget in February. There's back and forth on that. There's some thought that, the constitutional experts and all that, the lieutenant governor might want to know that if there's any doubt, like you don't have one of these power sharing agreements, you just decided to go issue by issue, the lieutenant governor might say, well, why don't you meet the legislature and show you have the confidence of the House. It's not compulsory, but if you put that together with David Eby's statement that we want to hit the ground running and that the public wants action, then I wouldn't be surprised if we have at least a short sitting of the legislature before Christmas, if David Eby's the winner.
If he's the winner. All right.
And if
we'll be watching.
Well, we'll have plenty to talk about next Friday, Harold.
Very good. Thanks, Vaughn.
Okay, bye-bye.